Trail talk time. Out on another beauty of a trail. Just breathing in that fresh chi. Vibing with nature right now. And today I wanted to dig a bit deeper into the, pharmaceutical industry and the whole medical industry in this modern age. I've been really inspired by these books I'm reading, and they're breaking down, where we get some of the things that we're still using today, namely in the germ theory versus another theory called terrain theory. And there are two key players that were, discovering things, doing research at the time. And basically, the information that we take today for germ theory is coming from this guy, Louis Pasteur, from France. And he was doing these studies, back in the 1800s. And there was another scientist at the time who was also a physician, among other things. And his name was Antoine Béchamp. I believe that's how you say his name. He's from France as well. And it was very similar to, the situation with Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Tesla was such a brilliant genius, coming up with all these incredible inventions. And so much of his work was suppressed. And, his projects were continually burned and everything. And, he was creating all of these beautiful things and trying to bring the world free energy, right? And Thomas Edison, he was, having a different way of seeing things. And now that we have all of these, power lines set up around our cities, tapped into these meters that people can read and, gauge how much power is being used, they can make money off of that, right? And so that's what really caused us to have this system. Thomas Edison was very close to people who had a lot of money. And so these, rich investors and everything basically funded, his ideas. And, the beautiful future that Tesla saw for humanity has yet to be seen. And it's all because of the money, right? And it's sad because it's a similar situation with Béchamp and Pasteur. A lot of stuff that Pasteur was doing in his experiments, he was simply taking from people who had already done them, such as Béchamp, and basically saying that he was the one who originally came up with these ideas. And, I'm still reading these books. I haven't finished them yet, but it's so interesting to see, the difference in their character, right? Béchamp was doing this research and he would come up with conclusive evidence, but he just simply wasn't as, out in the public eye and out for attention as Pasteur was. Pasteur, as soon as he would, stumble across something or have a result in an experiment, it's like he had to shout it to the world. And he luckily ran into somebody who had, a decent amount of power in getting the word out there. And that started to propel him more and more with each experiment into the public eye until he became the one that people were sort of looking to. And he became very close with Napoleon at the time, who was in power. And so he had all the power on his side. And, they sort of had a feud together because, Béchamp would see that this guy is, stealing my ideas and claiming them as his own. And maybe for a little while it would go unnoticed because Béchamp would be, in his laboratory. He'd be so focused on his experiments and everything. And he basically, from reading other things about him, has been brushed aside by so many people as if people thought he was kind of crazy or something with a lot of his ideas. But that's probably because it just simply goes against some of the things that Pasteur was bringing forth. And I feel like, Pasteur really didn't have as much expertise in all of these experiments as Béchamp did. And if you look at all of, his wording and his experiments and everything, he's not coming up with conclusive evidence for many things like Béchamp was. And he basically, in this book I'm reading, is being called an imposter and a plagiarist for a good reason. And so if we look at the germ theory versus terrain theory, I think the term terrain theory probably came about after, the fact, and people who read and researched things from Antoine Béchamp, created this term. But, Béchamp was looking deeper into, the cause of disease in the body and realizing that there's this transformational process going on. Our body creates these things and they are to help our body to stay healthy, right? So we have a lifestyle that creates certain conditions within our organism. And if it becomes, less healthy, then our body is very intelligent. It starts to create certain processes and starts to transform things in our body. And if it keeps getting worse, then these things keep transforming into sort of worse things in order to try and kill off anything that the body doesn't need anymore. And, Pasteur, his view of the germ theory is basically saying that the body is more so like this sterile thing, and that, our condition of health has everything to do with, the outside and the germs coming in from the air or our atmosphere around us. And so he's kind of neglecting, the whole other side of the situation and the terrain that plays a huge role in how these things are being transformed. Because two people can be in the same environment externally, and come across or come in contact with the same germs. But if their terrain is different, from living a different lifestyle, and the difference in their immune system and everything is different, then they're going to react differently to those things. One person might start becoming more sick, and the other person might remain perfectly healthy. And so I think the way that we're treating this whole COVID situation is just, looking at one side of the equation. And that's the way the whole, medical industry has been working for so long, because there's no, money to be made in actually healing people, right? If people are actually healthy, then they don't need to continue going into this industry to try and seek help. And so there's no money to be made. And so this allopathic form of treatment is just basically treating symptoms. or dealing with things looking at this one side of the germ theory. And we never really hear about, boosting our immune system and beautiful ways to do that, and, ways of keeping our lifestyle healthier. And they basically just diagnose things and give medications to people, which can continually make them money. And it's so sad. I remember seeing this infomercial with this guy who had a book about all of these natural medicines for things. And they were all different herbs and foods, taking it back to an older form of medicine, right? Let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food, right? Hippocrates said that. And that all stems from back in the Egyptian days with Imhotep saying the same thing. The medicine is in the food, and we can, create a better atmosphere or terrain within our body by our diet and our lifestyle. But this, this big pharmaceutical industry is making so much money off of the opposite approach. And this infomercial, the guy talks about how they can't put a patent on, an herb, a natural herb or food or something. And so, at least in the States, the way that it works is that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they don't allow doctors to actually prescribe these natural herbs or foods to their patients, because it technically has to be a drug that has a patent on it. So it has to be something like artificially created, which is just ridiculous. Like, you have to take the beautiful natural thing that the earth has given us and change it in order for it to be prescribed to a patient. How incredibly backwards is that? I mean, it's just so crazy. And so, I just wanted to bring forth these issues to take a step back and look closer, like how this system is really working, and looking back all the way to like the 1850s when some of this stuff was being researched, and we're going in such a backwards direction from all of this beautiful evidence that was put forth, because it just got swept under the rug. And the people with power continued to push forth these theories that were not even showing the big picture about what's going on within the human body and how germs actually work and transform. So I'm gonna be putting a link to these books in the comment section below in the information, and it's just so informative to take a look at the timelines of things. And it's pretty spectacular to realize, we're still kind of paying for these situations that started all the way back then. And I thought it was interesting. I've read from a few different sources that Pasteur, on his deathbed, was sort of saying something about the terrain, as if there was more importance to the terrain than he had been putting forth to the people, But I'm not sure exactly, what he was saying, but it was very similar to the guy who had created the term ADD, right? Attention deficit disorder. On his deathbed, he was said to have, been saying, this really isn't the truth, and there's more to it. He had just been, trying to gain power or money or recognition from what he was saying with this label and everything. And so, yeah, that type of stuff happens in life, and I thought it was super interesting. And so, yeah, that's all I wanted to share for today. I hope everyone has an amazing day, and I hope we continue to dig deeper for the truth. There's so much information out there, and sometimes it's hard to know, which sources to trust. But we just have to, trust our instinct, trust our intuition, and really see, that happens so much in life, is that if you trace it back, just follow the money, right? The money has corrupted so many people, and greed has caused so much, travesties in this life. And so we need to be wise moving into the future and not let money, corrupt us, and not let money be the guiding factor, or else we won't be making smart decisions for ourselves and for each other. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share for today. Hope everyone has an amazing day. Peace and limitless love.